Hey there, folks. So, last episode was a bit of a when things go wrong episode. I had screwed up, tried to overcomplicate things by creating a struct for the perception configuration for our NPCs, and ultimately that sort of backfired on me and it just didn't work. So, we fixed that, added a few variables, and got things working again. This episode, I have decided we are going to start on the. Sorry, I just moused over something on my start bar. We're going to start on equipment. Now, equipment itself is quite a complex setup. So, what I've done is I have created this lovely little flow diagram. I know I had a similar one for the last time we worked on inventory, but I thought I would redo it because it's a little more complex than I had previously defined it and set it up based on how I want to do this. So right now, we have, let me just grab this, grab some colors here, go green. We have our item, I'm on a vector layer. We have our item base. This is done. We have our consumable item, and we have our junk item. So we don't need to worry about those three base classes. What we do need to look at, though, is how we want to set up our equipment. And I do like using derived and child classes, well, derived/child classes, wherever possible, simply because it allows you to reuse logic as frequently as possible. So I've tried to set this up in a way that it's the classes are derived as best as possible. So ultimately, when you look at an equipment system, you're looking at things the player can equip. Now that is our base class, which is, I'm going to change this to a different color, which is our Equippable. And I do apologize if I have any spelling mistakes here. I knocked this up pretty quickly trying to get recording on this episode because I'm actually I've ran out of pre-recorded episodes. I have to get this out for tomorrow. So we have our base class, which is our Equippable. And that is going to be the parent class of all clothing, armor, things like that, and our weapons, because both of those are things that can be equipped. Now, as I just mentioned, we have our clothing, and then our weapons. Well, and actually there's one in here I could probably derive further. I was literally just thought of it. But so within our clothing, we don't really have the need for any additional distinction apart from possibly one. And I intentionally left this out because it's not really a child class. It's what I'd call like a sibling, not even a sibling, a brother class. And that is going to be, I'm just going to change this back to black. And you can't see me typing this, but there we go, backpack class. And I'd left this out because I wanted to also show how I go about this planning, because that's another thing that's very useful, is planning before you start writing things, because like writing the code, because you could plan everything out and it's perfect, or you can plan things out and you go, oh, actually this isn't going to work. Or you can not plan, do a bunch of code work that takes even longer than the planning would do, and then realize it's not going to work after the fact. So I do try to plan things as much as possible. You've probably heard me mention it in a few episodes that I need to go plan and think about some things. But there is one class here, and this is where I wish Unreal Engine allowed dual inheritance. And what that is you could have normal C++, you can have two inheritance. You can inherit from Equippable and, well, something else. But you can't do that with Unreal Engine. So the backpack, the reason why I want to have that separate Actually, I'm going to change that. It's not really a backpack. It is a, excuse me, container. The reason why I want to make that distinction is you have things like belt bags. You have, let's say, I'm just thinking hypotheticals here. You have your backpack. You have your tactical vests that have storage. You have cargo pants that could potentially have storage. But a t-shirt doesn't. Yes, you can get t-shirts with pockets, so on and so forth. So for that, we would want to have a separate subclass of the... Count on colors. Subclass of clothing that is dedicated for containers, because it's going to have some of its own unique logic, like its own inventory storage space, or however I decide to do that. I haven't actually figured out how I want to do that yet, compared to a generic inventory system, because you're going to have your backpack, but, well, the ability for a backpack, that's a given. But what I'm not 100% sure I want to handle multiple different storage receptacles. Do I want to have separate inventories like, say, Project Zomboid, where you have different individual inventories for each item? Or do you want to, or do I want to have like just a generic inventory that I add to? Like increasing the carry capacity, things like that. But either way, so we've got that. Our weapons, we have two subclasses of that. You have your melee weapon and you have your ranged weapon. And this is where that one I was like, I just thought of that came in. And I'm not sure if I want to have it as a subclass of ranged or its own unique subclass of weapon, and that's throwables. So think grenades, Molotov cocktails, things like that. So again, we'll add that in. I'll just hit X to switch over there, and I'm going to put this one here because I'm not actually sure where I want this to fall yet. And yes, I'm typing off screen, but that's because with Krita, it opens up a separate window for that. And then what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to change this to a gray line. No, gray doesn't cover it properly. What color do I want to use? Blue. No, yeah, blue. And yes, I understand this isn't really writing too much code right now, but it's something that I wanted to show because, and my great question mark there looks like a 2. But it's something I wanted to show because it is part of the planning process, and that works for everything, not just game design. It's code in general. I would highly recommend you plan. But anyways, now that we've got that, so going through just to expand on this, we've got a distinction between our weapons of melee, ranged, and then I'm not sure, again, do I want to do a throwable as a subclass of ranged, or do I want to do it as its own subclass of weapon? Now, for ranged, we're talking your firearms, bows, crossbows, guns, things like that. Oh, excuse me. They obviously need ammunition. What are they actually using for their projectile? Now, you could just create... that's not what I wanted to do. Middle mouse. You could just create like its own distinct class from item base, but I want to be able to like break down the ammunition. I want to be able to do things like, oh, I've got a 9mm round. I want to pull it apart. I want to be able to get casing. I want to get gunpowder. I want to get primer. I want to get the bullet tip. Or shotgun shells. I want to get the casing, the primer, gunpowder, the wad, and the shot. Things like that. Because again, I'm wanting to try and create as realistic as possible a survival game. And in there, I want the ability to like, oh, I found shotgun shells. I don't want to use shotgun shells, but I could use the gunpowder, and I've figure out how to reload ammo, or I want to use the shot and I want to melt it down to make something else. I don't know what you would use melted lead for, but anyways, because of that, I made the decision to have a derived class of the junk item for the ammunition, which is obviously something that the ranged weapons require. Now, with that, what I've got here off to the side, and I never filled anything out, this is just, I hate how it's middle mouse, a place where I could put down, well, what does each of these need for their information. So, however, I decided against doing that layer, there we go. Simply because Krita was being a pain in the butt, because instead of doing next line, it's skipping a line. But so let's go slot. I'm just going to add a couple of things in here to give you an idea. Okay, I'll just put those in, and you can see also why I chose not to do this, because of how messy this looks. Because it creates individual parts for each one. I got a huge vector layer there. Oh, anyway, so with that, this gives you a rough idea. So we have an equippable item. Well, what slot does it fit? Every equippable item is going to have a slot or slots that it can occupy on your equipment grid. Okay, well, clothing, what's clothing offer? It's going to offer protection. And then a container item of clothing is also going to offer storage space. Your weapon, well, we have to think, okay, well, what is a melee, a ranged, and a throwable gonna all have in common? Well, there's handiness, and what that means, or what I'm referencing by that, is it a one-handed weapon? Is it a two-handed weapon? Can it be a one-handed weapon and a two-handed weapon? So let's say, for example, I'm trying to think what you could do that, a pool cue. That's you could use that as a one-handed weapon. It's going to be really awkward to wield. Or you could use it as a two-handed weapon, and it's going to be a little easier to use. Obviously, all weapons are going to have a base damage amount. Then for melee, well, what sort of things is melee going to have? Well, it's going to have, obviously, a hand... going back to the handiness, it's going to have a handiness modifier if it's multi-use. So a one-handed, like swinging a pool cue with one hand, you're going to hit hard. Swinging it with both hands, you're going to hit harder. And that's what that's going to be. So you're going to have things like damage modifiers there. Where a ranged weapon, you're not going to have a damage modifier if you're using a rifle one-handed or two-handed. You're going to have an accuracy modifier. Using, say, a Barrett 50 cal with one hand, you're probably not going to be able to even aim properly, let alone like hit the target. So there's certain things there as well. Ammo, obviously, it's going to have a damage modifier because you're going to have your base damage of the weapon that's going to get modified by the ammunition type that's loaded. So thinking there, all the different types of ammunition. There's FMJ, copper, steel, incendiary. Like there's all those different types. And they're going to have a damage and potential side effect. Incendiary, you shoot something like that, it's potentially going to catch on fire, sort of thing. And then throwables, obviously, they have their own status effect. So, I know we're already 14 minutes into the video and we haven't really even touched the code yet, but this was an important thing to break down. I wanted to break this down so that it was understood the direction I was going with things. So with this, though, the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to start working on the equippable item. So for that, we're going to hop back over to the engine quickly. I'm going to pull over our content browser. Go down to our C++ classes, fall, public, items, and then here you go. You can see we have consumable, item, and junk item. Well, taking a look, we're basing this off the item base. So we're going to work from that one. Create C++ class derived from item base. Equippable. And before I actually type that out, Equippable. Is it 1P? I believe it's 1P. Sorry, I'm just checking spelling off on the side of the screen. Yeah, okay, it's 2Ps. So, equippable item base. And you can see it's already in our items folder. We're going to create class. And what I'm going to do for this, I'm actually going to pre-create a lot of these just so that we can move things along at a quicker pace in future episodes. So this is going to be a bit of a slower episode. There's not going to be a huge amount of actual code progress, but it's going to be setting up the foundations for everything else. So once we've got this one in, we're going to want to create, obviously, our derived class for clothing and weapon. And we're going to want to, obviously, again, for our slot, we're going to want to determine, do we want to use a integer as a reference? Do we want to use a enum? Things like that. Now, personally, I'm already made the decision I am going to use an enum. And it's going to be an array. An array or a map? Can't be a map because, well, it could be a map, but that's a little overkill. Actually, I wanted to use an enum, but I'm trying to think because you could have, say, for example, I'm trying to think something multi-slot. Brain's not working. Actually, I'm trying to think if there's anything that would be multi-slot. No, thinking about it, there isn't. Because, yeah, your slot would be handheld, or hands, plural. And then handiness, it down from the weapon category, would be used to determine. So, yeah, actually, no, there is no multi-slot there. So, okay, are you done yet? It's still compiling. I thought I turned off live compile. Well, anyways, so what I'm going to do, just because like we are already at the 18-minute mark, I'm going to go through, let me just grab a different color here. Purple. Well, fuchsia. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and create these derived classes. I'm not going to add any logic. I'm just going to go through the process within the editor to create those base classes. And then I will be back, like I said, just in the interest of time to save you guys watching me do the same thing over and over again when it's literally just changing the name of a class. So I will be back in a moment. Alright, so I've gone through, I've created the clothing, the equippable, and the weapon item base classes. Now the other thing I was just talking about that I want to create is that enum for the slot. So what we're going to do here, we'll just go back to our public folder, right click new C++ class, leave that as the none empty, do our folder selection and select the data type folder, and this is going to be equipment slot. And we're just going to create that class. And this is the last thing we need to create to get things started with these, well, I say 3 base classes. Really, it's the 3 classes we're using for the core equipment system. So now that's done, we're going to hop back to, actually I'm going to close out of the editor this time instead of just dropping out. I'm going to wait for the editor to, Visual Studio to stop there. Come on, you're all but done. TikTok. But yeah, so anyways, while this does its thing, I'm going to reload all now. So we're going to obviously have our slots, our various items, and everything that we're going to work on there. So the equipment slot, good, it did load. So I'm going to close out of all of this stuff. And we're going to start, first of all, just with the equipment slot. Pretty easy, just get rid of that. And actually, I think there's stuff created in the source file as well, isn't there? Yep, get rid of those. Okay, so as before, UEnum blueprint type, because we want this to be exposed to the editor, because as I've mentioned, though I'm doing everything in C++ where possible, well, where I'm comfortable in C++, there's certain things like animations and UI that I'm not comfortable in C++ yet, but you need to keep in mind, are you always going to be the only developer working on the project? Is somebody else going to be coming in to help you out who's more of a blueprint person? So exposing things to blueprints where possible, that makes sense. It's a really fine line, but exposing things to blueprint is always a good idea if it's not going to potentially risk things down the line. So anyway, so it's an enum equipment slot. It's derived from a uint8 because that's how it works with Unreal Engine. So equipment slot underscore, we're going to say head. I'm just going to put a few in here quickly. Actually, for ease, I'm going to copy that. Head, torso, hands, legs, feet, weapon, backpack. Now, this is obviously not going to be an exhaustive list. There's going to be more. I haven't fully decided how in-depth I want my equipment system to be. Honestly, I'm thinking I want left shoe, left hand, right hand, belt, socks. Yeah, I'm thinking a equipment grid that equipable setup that is pretty exhaustive, because I want to have like t-shirt, sweater, hoodie, heavy winter coat. I want, like, if you're in the Arctic, you're going to have multiple layers, things like that. So, but for now, this is the basis we're going to do. Is that going to fix that issue? Does not have a zero entry. It's a problem with the enum. I'm going to have to look into what that error is. I'm going to see if this resolves it. But probably not, because I'm just taking a guess. And then the other thing we want, have we done that in our other enums? Yes. Include equippable slot generated .h. Okay, so that's our initial setup there. Pretty basic. Like I said, this isn't going to be exhaustive. I need to actually sort of iron it out, but this is a nice point to work from. So the next thing, sorry, I'm losing myself in this. Sorry, it's because items. So the next thing, we want to work on our equipable item base. Well, in here, we're going to want to include data type equipment slot. So In here, we're going to go private, protected, and public. U property, edit defaults only, blueprint read only, allow, meta equals allow private access equals true. And then we want equippable equipment slot type. Now, there's a few other things that we want to take into consideration here. What is something that, get rid of that pink for a second, all of these items are going to have in common? Well, we have this slot. Well, the other thing is they're all going to go on a character. Well, to go on a character, 9 times out of 10, they're going to have a skeletal mesh. So, why are you complaining? You cannot use one as type. Oh, yeah. Enum as byte. It's because this is a data class. So, yeah, it's there. Don't complain. Thank you. So the next one we want is U property edit. Looks like it's spelled property right. Edit defaults only. Blueprint read write. Read only. Meta equals allow. I don't know. I just didn't copy this. Okay, and then it's going to be a class because we don't want to include the header here because it just adds a load of bloat. And this particular class, because it is nothing but a data class, does not need to know about all of the functionality of the skeletal mesh. So it's class U skeletal mesh component pointer character mesh. All right. So, well, what do you complain about there? What did I miss? Okay, it complains about. I'm just going to do this because it apparently doesn't like what I put in the first one. Oh, because I can't spell private right. Derp. All right. So we have our slot type. We have our character mesh. Well, what other things are we going to want on? Available to every single equippable item? Well, off the top of my head, that's the only thing. So what we want to do is add in some functions quickly. Blueprint callable, blueprint pure, because these are going to be const returns. I'm going to enum as byte, get slot type const, and actually I'm going to add that in as a forward declaration at the top, because then we don't need to do it down here because we're going to use it twice. Get character mesh const. Now the whole reason for using consts is to ensure that once the information leaves this data class, it can't be changed. It makes it immutable. So create these two definitions quickly. And we're actually getting close to, we're going to want to end this episode off. So we might have 2 episodes of some setup, but we don't need that. So we want slot type, return slot type, and return character mesh. And we're just going to do a build quick to make sure I haven't caused any weird problems. So while the build runs, because this may take a little bit, I will use this as a chance to sort of go over some things. So like I said, I don't want it from here. I want it from this one. Our equipment slots, actually built really quick. Our equipment slots, like I said, this is not an exhaustive list, and you can set this up however you want. Like, you've got some games that you have multiple equipable slots. Like, as I mentioned, Project Zomboid, you have like shoes, socks, pants, belt, depending if it's, well, vanilla, and then you have undershirt, outer shirt, hoodie, coat, head, gloves. Like, there's, just off the top, I think there's 6 or 7 equipment slots for clothing on a player character in Zomboid. 7 because there's backpack. And then you have the ability to hold things in your hands, which is also equipment slots. But then you have other games like, let's say, Project Zomboid. Not Project Zomboid, that's one I just talked about. 7 Days to Die. I like playing zombie games, if you haven't gathered. Previously, they had a bunch, but now with 1.0, there's 4. There's head, chest, hands, and feet. Sorry. Head, hands, feet, and everything else. I'll rephrase that. It's not really chest. Because that's your legs, your chest, your arms, all in one item. So it's going to be down to how extensive you want the number of equipment items available to your characters. So, hey there, folks. So last episode, we started off the process of working on our actual equipment system. One thing I realized right after I hit the stop recording button is I have this in the wrong spot. So for anyone who's not overly familiar with C++ and the private, protected, and public definitions, that would be these 3 here. What these are is, private means nothing outside of the equipable item base class can do anything with these. What protected means is this class or any child classes that's derived class, so that's going to be things like our clothing or our weapon, have access to this functionality. And then public is every class under the sun can access this information. And I realized these 2 really should be in protected, not in private. So I'm going to move those down into protected because we don't want to have to, I'm going to leave that in there for consistency, to worry about that in our other classes. Like, we want, if it's a clothing item, we want to be able to potentially make some changes to the slot type, if it's, or the character mesh, things like that. And that'll be for things like, say, you want to add visible degradation to your equipment. So, like, your shirt gets ripped and you need to change this character mesh, things like that. So, sorry, just taking a quick drink there. So anyways, as I mentioned last episode, we are going to do some additional work here. What we're going to be doing is expanding our character class to account for these. So I'm going to close out the equipable item base for now. And we're going to go into our public base class, and this is our character base. Now, I understand this is going to be used for everything. It's going to be our bears, our deers, our wolves, our humans, or humanoid, I'll rephrase that. But I don't want to make that distinction to that extent, that there is, it's NPC character, that we have character and then we have humanoid character, because we can't, and the whole reason, as I mentioned in last episode, you can't have a multi-parent inheritance on a single class with Unreal Engine. It is a single chain. I personally really dislike that, but it's how Epic has written it. So I had to work around how I wanted to have multi-inheritance versus single inheritance, or working around the fact I can't have multiple inheritance. So with that, we're going to be doing everything on our character. Now, again, I understand this is not the most efficient. However, for my purposes, unless it proves a problem, which if it does, we'll be addressing it later in the series, I'm just going to do all of this on a character class. Anyways, beating a dead horse there. So we want to go class, use skeletal mesh. Actually, no, it's exposed through character. So I'm going to go into U properties. Go in, add this in here. Actually, I'm going to create a region for this. So pound octa4 or hashtag, whatever you know it as, pragma region trying to think, equipment skeletons, and then pragma end region. Okay, so, and the whole reason for this is, you'll see once I get this done. It's going to do tooltip. Get rid of the tooltip on these. And I'm going to give them a category as well, actually. Category. Equipment. Sorry, I was just fixing that property. My brain shut off. Okay, so I'm going to copy that. So what we want here is use skeletal mesh component pointer. Now we're going to have to we're not going to have. We're going to want to add something for, I'm going to say everything but weapon, because weapon is going to be a little different. So head, torso, not toros. Head, torso, hands, leg, feet, backpack. Hat mesh, use skeletal, and actually I'm going to change my copy here to this for ease. Hat mesh, torso mesh, torso mesh, leg mesh. What else did we have in there? Got you. So we have hands, feet, and backpack. Hand mesh, feet mesh, backpack mesh. Okay, so now we've got all of those in here. Let me just space these out a little bit. Quickly explain the pragma region. Literally, it just allows you to collapse this and hide it, because we're not worried about it. Everything's still there, nothing's been removed. It's just set up like that, so you can collapse things, and it helps keep code organized and less messy, and you can do away with things you're never going to worry about. Alright, so, well, now we've done that, we need to actually go through and set everything up for those to be valid objects. So what we're going to do is, in our private section, base class character, or TF character in this case, obviously your project character, in the constructor, we're going to want to add a few more things in here. So what I'm going to do quickly, actually I'm going to just grab that. It shouldn't throw a syntax error, even though it does nothing. Quickly just copy these over so I'm not bouncing back and forth for each and every one, because there's quite a few things we need to do with these. So and backpack mesh. Apparently I have show white space on. All right, so copy those over. So what we want to do here, we're going to start with our hat mesh. So obviously it equals create default sub-object, use skeletal mesh component, text, and I'm going to leave it as this because I'm going to quickly copy this down to the other ones we've just added. And then I'm going to put head where so it's visible. It makes more sense in the editor. Head where mesh. Torso where mesh. And again, like I said last episode, this list is not expansive or exhaustive, sorry. I probably am going to be expanding this further later on in the series, but leg where mesh, hand where, oh, don't need the space at the start, foot where mesh, backpack mesh. Okay, so now we've created those. Obviously, they're going to be in the editor when you look at the blueprint, but they're going to be floating off in their own place. So what we want to do is hat mesh, setup, attachment, get mesh. And what this is it's getting that base skeletal mesh, and it's saying, okay, you're a child of. And I'm going to do this for all of them. Torso mesh, leg mesh, hand mesh, feet mesh, not backpack. Well, backpack is what I spelt it as. Backpack mesh. I'm going to fix that quickly. Backpack. Reminds me of my daughter and her current trend of saying big back. Very dislike that, but anyways, so now this is all well and good. It attaches the mesh, these new meshes, to the main skeletal mesh, but they don't have a linked animation. So the other thing we're going to want to do here, and actually we're using get mesh a lot, so I'm going to go use skeletal mesh pointer parent equals get mesh, and I'm doing this just for the sake to explain. That's component, sorry, mesh component. To explain why I'm doing this is we have one function execution and a data assignment, and then here we have multiple function executions. So what I'm going to do, that is right, it's just not highlighting in IntelliSense, so I'm going to copy that and do this. Now honestly, it's not a huge process, like processing power consumption, but at the same time, calling an identical function to get the same object over and over and over again, just do this. Create a local variable, do it once, use that as a reference. But anyways, so as I was saying, they are attached within the hierarchy of the character, but they're not actually linked for the purpose of animation. So what we want to do here is go hat mesh set lead pose component, or leader pose component, and this is going to be parent. So what set leader pose component does is it basically says any bone that will say the hat mesh shares that is identical to the mesh of this follow the exact same animations as the parent bone. So alright, so we're going to copy that, and we're going to just do that for the rest of these. And backpack mesh. Okay, So we have that all set up. Now, obviously, these are null pointers. There's no actual mesh, but we're going to do a quick build here. Hop into the editor, and then I'm going to show you a asset pack I'm going to be using just for the purposes of testing this out as well. So actually, while this builds, because that's quite a bit, let's look at that right now. I was looking at animations for one of the side projects I'm working on. Character. Where is it? Customized post-apocalyptic characters. There we go. Sorry, it was being slow. I'm not sure on Fab. It's a bit of a weird one, but so in here, anyways, we have what is a modular mesh that we could use for this setup. So you can see here we have torsos, we have backpacks. If this one wants to load, apparently it doesn't want to load. But we have multiple heads, leg, feet, and a few other accessories. So I'm going to be adding that into the project as part of this, but I'm going to get rid of that for now. Okay, so you can see our build succeeded. So we're going to locally launch the editor, and we're going to take a look to see how these skeletal meshes we've had in here are added in, and make sure all of this actually works. So, and apparently I haven't launched the editor. No, I haven't done a code commit since. Well, this is potentially going to take a little bit of time to load up, so I'm going to pause the video. And actually, I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to add that asset pack in, and then I will be back once we have the asset pack added in and we're in the editor. All right, so we are back in the editor. We've got that asset pack added in. And just quickly to show you some of the various parts that are assigned to that, I just filter this to skeleton mesh. You can see there's backpacks, torsos, actually eyes, glasses. And this gives you an idea of what sort of parts you can add. Actually, with this mess, we need to add eyes, but I'm not worried about that. So yeah, we've got backpacks, torsos, head, mask, teeth. I'm gonna have to expand that if I want to use these assets, but pants, shoes, so everything we need there. But so what we're going to do, though, we're going to take a quick look at our player character, which is third person. Sorry, there we go. Third person, blueprints, and BP third person, because this is what we're using for now, even though it's not third person anymore. It's first person with option of third person. But okay, come on, load up the asset. Why are you being a pain? All right, so here you can see we have, pull this over and scroll down a bit. We have our hat mesh, leg mesh, torso mesh, backpack, feet, hands. If we go to our viewport, you can see these are all right now just parented with nothing. So let's see if we can actually get this to work. Our anim blueprint's not going to work because we're changing our skeleton. We're going to have to work on some animations as well. Might be what next episode is retargeting animations. I'm not overly good at that, but so parts. Actually, let's see what the full skeleton. Yeah, there's no just body, so parts. So what we're going to do for this, for everyone's reference, so I'm going to just have this open, and we're going to just assign some components to that. So what we're going to do for our main mesh, that is just going to be our head. So if we add that, you can see it's now there. It is animating, but the animation is screwed up. So I'm going to just do that. Yeah, there you go. You can see it's a little better now for at least this part. So we've got our hand mesh. I know there's some gloves in there. Where are they? Do they mount? Install? Oh no, they are hands. So we add a hand mesh, then our foot mesh. So I'm going to add just adding the first of each item in here. Backpack mesh. I'm going to add that one. It's a little more YouTube appropriate for the backpack mesh. It's not a torso. Torso mesh. And the leg mesh is going to be this one. And then what's our last one? Hat mesh. What hat should I give him? I'll give him just the hat. Okay, so you can see from here that all those components are, all the skeletal mesh actors are connected. They're all in the right place for the skeleton. Now, obviously, there's some animation issues, so let's see if there is animations in this. No, there isn't. Trying to think. Let's see. I'm going to try retargeting quickly. Retarget animations. Okay, so that's that. Let's go find you. Actually, we're going to use this one. Find that. Okay, so this is the retarget window. I'm not overly experienced with this. Let's just go idle. Actually, no. So we want underscore. We want idle, jump, fall loop, land, run forward, T-pose, walk forward, and walk in place. So export animations, and then that is our mega post apocalyptic character, and I'm going to go new folder, retarget anims, and we're going to export those and export. And hopefully this does what I want it to do. I've had some issues with animations in the past, so let's use an anim asset, and we're going to put it on idle. All right, so this shows you exactly what I wanted to. Can I move you? Yeah. So in here you can see all of the assets are correctly posed and following that animation. So obviously, as I mentioned, we need to go through and add some more, because if you go up here, you can see he has no eyes. But for this character, it's not a concern, because this is the player character. He's not going to see eyes. But potentially, if you want to render your character on, say, your inventory screen, you'd want to be able to see things like that. So start time, end time. So I'm trying to remember what I... Oh, that is for how long it took to save. Yeah, okay. Sorry, I just seen those. But so yeah, that is what we have been able to achieve using... Come on, Visual Studio, open up. That's what all of this does. So that is these two functions we're calling for the skeletal mesh. The setup attachment is we are saying you are a child of this parent mesh. And then the set leader pose component is what is telling that mesh to follow the animation of its parent for any bone that is identical. So those are also exposed to blueprints. So if you wanted to do this in Blueprint as well, so you would grab your hand mesh, your parent mesh, and then off your child, you'd go set leader and set leader pose component. And then that's it there. I'm not going to connect this because I don't want to cause some weird cyclical code. But that was how you would do this in Blueprints as well. Hey there, folks. So last episode we we added in the various different skeletal mesh components for our NPCs. Let's bring over our third person blueprint here. You can see we've got multiple different mesh available for our character. This episode, what I want to do is start working on the functionality so we can actually equip and unequip things. So, excuse me, my chair is very noisy. So, to do that though, what we need, we have set it up in the class. I'm just trying to explain things a little bit. What we need is to we'll go to the event graph here quickly just so I can show this in a blueprint. So, skeletal mesh have a runtime feature called set skeletal mesh asset. And what this does is this allows you to assign a new skeletal mesh to a pre-existing slot, or actually let me undo that. If you leave it blank, it actually just removes the mesh. So I'm going to undo that. So to go about that though, what we need to do is add that to our NPC class, or sorry, our character class. So I'm going to close out of the editor here, and we're going to hop back into Visual Studio. And with that, what we're going to want to do is add a function towards the bottom. Well, actually at the bottom, because it's going to be a public function, so everything's available. And I'm going to call this set this as a bool, so we can basically say yes or no, this worked. Bool equip. Trying to think, how do I want to... I'm trying to think, equip item. So now it's going to need to take a couple of inputs. Well, actually one input ultimately, and that is going to be our TF item or item base equippable item. Sorry, equippable item base. So to do that, I'm going to open up the source file. Actually, no, header file. No, source file will work for this because I just need the class name. So we have equippable item base. And in the input parameters for the function, we're just going to put class equippable item base pointer item. And I've mentioned in previous episodes, but this class is a forward declaration, and that's just basically saying to the header file, look, we're going to be passing in a class data type as the input, but you don't need to know about it. And honestly, the header file for the character class doesn't. So now we've got that, we're going to right click and quick action create definition. And in here, this is where we're going to need to do a few different things. So first things first, we're going to look at our header file. I should have opened the header file for our equippable item. So we have our slot type, which we have accessible to us through the get slot type, and our skeletal mesh, which is accessible to through our get character mesh. So first thing we're going to want to do here is do a switch, if I could type, on item get slot type. Oh, and this isn't going to work because we are missing that include. So up here at the top, include items equippable item base. And that should get rid of, yep. So the reason we need that include is obviously so it has all the information it needs about these functions. Get slot type. So now we've got that. We have our slot types we need to look at here. Apparently I minimized that. So we have head, torso, hand, leg, feet, weapon, backpack. So what I'm going to do for ease, I'm just going to copy that over. And just follow these in order. And I'm just going to fast forward through this part. Alright, so the basics of the switch statement are set up there. What I'm going to do though, just quickly, expand switch as new slot types are added. Alright, so let's make sure that's clear. Equipment slot types are added. So this note is, as I mentioned in the previous episodes, I'm not 100% if this is going to be my exhaustive list on, all the visible equipment on the actor. I might want to add a belt or a couple other items like some belt accessories, things like that. So, well, now we've got this. Well, default, we obviously know this one's going to be logger, get instance, add message, error level, warning, and then break. And the reason, for anyone who's not sure, these error, like this logger is custom logging I add, and it puts the logging in a very specific folder, and this error level sort of adds a preface to it so we know what sort of error it is. Unknown slot type. And then what I'm going to do, so we don't actually accidentally hit that, I'm going to just throw a break there for safety. Actually, we don't need a break. This can be a return false because it doesn't do anything it needed to do there. This is also a catch-all return just in case something else fails. So at this point, we have a couple options on how we could go about. We could go through and put in all the code here, backpack mesh, set skeletal mesh asset. Actually, won't set skeletal mesh because we need that reinit pose. We could go through about this and go like item get character mesh. I put that as a skeletal mesh component. Oh, I did. Whoops. Okay, I'm pretty sure that's what needed. And then equippable item base source. And there we go. So I think that was my mistake. I was getting carried away there. And this should fix that error. Yeah, there we go. So we could do that. Or where we go through and then it would be like item, apply additional information, things like that. Because as we mentioned, it's going to be either a clothing item or a weapon, and they're going to have certain side effects. Like there's going to be some thermal protection, there's going to be potentially movement speed penalties, things like that. The other option, which is actually what I'm going to go for, and it's going to be, some people may be a little confused with the approach, but it's going to be creating functions for each of these. And the whole reason for doing that is the KISS method. Keep it stupid simple. I prefer that. I know there's two different words. There's keep it stupid simple and keep it simple stupid. Keep it stupid simple doesn't imply whoever you're talking to might be stupid. Either way, the whole reason for that is it's a methodology I like to follow where the logic in a function performs one action. And this here, it's basically going, okay, what item is it? Okay, that's the function. And then we have functions for various different things here. So to do that, we're going to have a backpack, a foot, hand, head, leg, torso, and weapon. So these do not need to be public functions, actually. Oh, and I missed this. U function blueprint callable, because we want this to be exposed to blueprints because it's something we may want to use through our UI code or blueprinting. But so with that, what I'm going to do here is add in a new region, pragma region equip functions, pragma end region. And in here, we're going to go bool. And again, these are all going to be Booleans because they're either going to succeed or they're going to fail. And we can just use that as a straight pass through here. We'll replace this break with a return set backpack item. So set backpack item, helps if I add a space in there, and that's going to be, and actually I mentioned this previously, we're going to copy this, get rid of that, and we're just going to put the forward declaration right at the top because we're going to be using this a huge number of times. Okay, so I'm going to copy that, and then we have bool set torso item, bool set leg item, bool set hand item, bool set weapon. And there's 7 of those in there. 1, 2, head. What am I missing? So head, torso, hands. Missing head. Bool set head item. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Backpack, torso, leg, hand, weapon, head. Head, feet. There we go. Okay, so again, just like I was saying, the whole purpose of this is that KISS methodology where we try to limit it to limit a function to a single purpose wherever possible. Because then that way you know, okay, that's all this function does. It doesn't need to have a huge number of different functions. And the other thing is with this, and I had mentioned it was in a comment regarding the stat line component and putting, actually I'm just going to bring that up quick actually, because it was a valid question. And it was why am I using tick for the excuse me here. Why is this getting put here in the tick, which is called every frame? For my personal use, just to explain, and I understand it's dragging the episode on, but the reason I'm putting it here is I want the degree of accuracy that this gives me. Because if one frame takes 10 milliseconds and then the next frame takes 15 milliseconds, both of those frames are going to have the exact same impact on the regeneration or decay of your stats. Now, a timer, in theory, has that exact same functionality. You set it to say, okay, this timer is going to run every second. And it should, in theory, run every second. However, there is some minor bias in there, plus or minus, like a couple of frames, depending on how long it takes to get to that particular tick function. Timer function. So that was something I was willing to ignore to start with because I want this level of accuracy. But if for some reason this becomes too much of a resource hog because the stat tick is just consuming too much because there's too many actors with stat lines that are ticking, I can move that over to a function. A timer function. And that's quite easy. We just tell the timer to call this, and all we have to do is make a minor code change to say this isn't an input parameter, it's just like 1 or whatever we decide the timer interval is. So then with that, all I have to do is say, okay, well, I'm just going to call tick stats. and then we could just have actually wouldn't even need to do that. We would just have to say, oh, we have a timer value of 1, so every second we're just going to pass in 1 every time. And that would be a very quick way to iterate over that code, make that change, and then you could go through and adjust. Like, if that works, then you can go through and adjust all your other code after the fact. So, but anyway, so like huge side tangent there for what should be a fairly simple thing. Going back to this here. So we now have all of our functions to call. And with that, what we're going to be doing here, it's fairly simple. And initially, these are very basic functions because we don't want, we don't have a ton of logic, a ton of other information to put in. So I'm just going to make these all return true because everything is going to succeed. This is just going to be a case of backpack mesh, set skeletal mesh, item, get character mesh. And that's going to be quite simple and all we need to do for this one. And then this is going to be torso mesh, same thing. Leg mesh, same thing. And so on and so forth for all of these. Now this is also where I'm actually going to skip the weapon one because that's a little more involved. As I mentioned, I call it hat mesh or head mesh? Hat mesh. Feet mesh sounds almost like fetish. Anyway, so with the weapon one, we're going to leave that one for now, but that's because the way I plan on doing weapons is it's actually going to be attaching a blueprint basically to a socket in the player's hand or to their belt, depending. Still need to figure that one out. So weapons are still going to be a little ways down the line. But all this is doing here is going to be assigning a mesh. Now, there's one thing that's missing with this, and it's going to cause an exception the first time this scenario occurs. This does not account for removing an item. So what I would think to do, and I may change this process, but is valid. Oh. Is change it up to be this. So we're checking if it's a valid item. If it is, we're putting in the character mesh. If not, we're clearing the mesh. So I'm going to quickly change that on all of these. Now there is quite a few different methodologies you could do here. You could be like if not is valid item hand mesh set skeletal mesh null pointer. And then return true. Now these all only have return trues because there could be a case of certain items have certain requirements. Like I'm just trying to think what would be a good example of that. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that would be valid within the scope of my project. But it would be something like, say, your fantasy games where, like, oh, you need to have a minimum strength of 20 to be able to equip this sword, things like that. So within this logic, you would add that. But quickly just put these through. All right, so now we've added that in. Let's just do a quick build, and I'll talk while this builds. But so with this, like I said, there's going to obviously be in here additional things that need to be done. Right now, this is just the visual aspect of updating the appearance of your character, or of the character, because this could technically apply to AI. Like I'm wanting to hopefully get AI to a point where there's AI humans that sort of walk around like, oh, it's freezing cold, there's a coat over there, I'm going to go put it on. Things like that. Now, whether I actually ever get that far, who's to know? But that is sort of my end goal, and why I'm doing all of this in the character base class, because as I mentioned before, reusing functionality, and that's the whole reason for all the derived classes within the items, is anything that is going to be used by the multiple child classes should be put in the parent. So like in here, I want any NPC as well as the player to, any humanoid NPC. I'll clarify that one because you're not going to have a bear put a coat on. But any humanoid NPC should be able to go put a coat on, and as well as the player. So here's the functionality for that. So sorry, I was having to drink coffee there. So this build succeeded, so all of this is working. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to launch into the editor, and we're just going to it's where I'm going to end off this episode after we figure it out. But I'm just going to go through and add like a keybind that changes the mesh between the characters, I don't know, his hat, between two things. And we'll just use that to set that up. So we'll have to create 2 equippable items, and then we'll have those 2. So with that though, just because this build is going to take a minute, I'm going to pause the video, and I will be back as soon as we are in the editor. Alright, so we're back in the editor here. I'm going to quickly pull over the content browser. We're going to go to our project, files, blueprints, and we're going to go into dev, because this is just, again, we're just doing some test items. So right click, blueprint class, equip, if I could spell, item. What am I missing there? I know what I'm missing. I just realized, completely forgot from last episode. We're a couple episodes back. So if you ever run into this issue where you've created a class and you can't create a blueprint for it, it's right here, U class. If you notice, I'll hop back in here quickly. We go blueprint class, and I go item. You can see we have item base, consumable, and junk item, but we don't have equippable item. So if we go back to Visual Studio and we just take a quick look in the header file for these, so we have item base. Oh, no, maybe not. What am I missing? Junk item, blueprintable. Yeah, okay, and okay, weapon, consumable. Okay, sorry, yeah, no. The reason why item base is showing up is it's the parent, but if I check, sorry, that threw me off. I just want to check item base, it doesn't let us. But if we go and select consumable item, it gives us that select option. So the reason for that is this is missing from that U class decorator, the blueprintable attribute. So I'm going to just quickly go through actually, and apparently I left my phone on right next to my microphone. Let me just turn that off. But yeah, so if you add blueprintable into the U class at the top for your items, that's going to allow you to create a blueprint from it. So with that, I do need to stop the editor, rebuild the project, and hop back in. So I'm going to pause the video again, and I will be right back as soon as we're back in the editor with these quick changes compiled in. Actually, make sure they're all in there. Alright, so we're back in the editor, and let's give this a second try and see if That change actually fixed my issue. Come on, content browser. There we go. Okay, so blueprint item, and there you can see we have equippable item, clothing item. We don't have all of them because I didn't go through and add it into every single one, just because, well, weapons and stuff aren't ready yet. So we're going to go equipment item base, actually clothing item, sorry. And this is going to be dev underscore BP hat 01. And nice thing with Epic and Unreal Engine, because it's got that 01, which is a number of indicator, you can just duplicate and that changes to 02. Open both of these up quick. And I'm just going to move the content browser off the screen. A for ease and B so it's there when I grab the hat mesh. And open up 2. And there we go. And then let's grab the... where are they? Mega. There we go. Mesh and parts. And we're using the bowler hat right now, so I'm going to use 2 different ones. I'm going to use the mouse and what other one? The pot. So the mouse will be for hat 2 and the pot will be for hat 1. So now that we've done that, we're just going to open up our third person blueprint quickly. All right, there we go. So in here, as you can see right now by default, we have our, I don't want to call it a bowler hat, cowboy hat. So I'm going to add just a temporary boolean in here. So B hat flip flop. And it's going to just be that there. So in our event graph, we already have some bindings in here. We have 7, we have 9 for our save. I'm going to put this on 4 just because it's far enough away from everything else. And then go flip flop. Grab this, and then we're also going to set this, and we're going to go not. Oh, no, that's not what we want. We just want a branch for this, sorry. And this will cause it to flip back and forth between that. And we'll go branch. So that's an if statement. And we're going to do this to our hat mesh. Set skeletal mesh. Asset. True. Duplicate that to false. And then, I'm trying to think. Probably need these as variables. Hat 1. Trying to remember how to do this. Object reference. Yeah, object reference, sorry. So hat 1 is going to be true, and hat 2. Let's get these in here quick. Do a quick compile. Okay. And then I'm going to play in selected viewport. And I believe V is our... oh, something broke. Oh, byte trigger. I have to look into that. Okay, so obviously you can see our camera position is pretty bad. We're inside our head mesh, so we'll need to change things here. But if we hit V, is it V? Oh, I have that off by default. Let's go. Player. No, character. No, it won't let me change it there, so let's find it in here. Active. There we go. Okay, and then we hit 4. Oh, it's not working. That is... Yeah, the object's not valid. That's why. All right, well, this episode is running... Hey folks, so last episode we had started working on the logic to actually add the skeletal mesh to our character. And we'd ended things off where I was having some trouble sorting that out. And that was actually just down to the fact that I had used the wrong data type for our hat. They needed to be a class reference because it's not a physical object, we're just referencing the data. And that's what I had screwed up. I also screwed up this flip-flop. I hadn't actually correctly caused it to toggle back and forth. So after I ended the recording, I just quickly fixed this just to make sure I hadn't screwed something up. But I did find some other problems that we're going to address this episode. But just quickly, you can see in here, when we press 4, we're going to bounce back and forth between hat 1 and 2. We have them set up as class references. We're getting the class defaults, and I'm just exposing the pin for the character mesh because we don't need any of the other stuff. And then in here, we're just passing it through and we're setting that. So just quickly compile and save this. I'm going to move it out of the way. I'm going to hit play. Follow camera, and we're going to hit activate. And then when I hit 4, you can see we're switching between those two. So it's correctly pulling that information out of our class reference. Now, this is where I ran into the actual issue with how this is set up. Because this was just to test setting the skeletal mesh. We're not calling that function we made. What we want to do is equip item. But, well, now we have this issue. We're looking for an object reference. Well, that doesn't work because that's not what we want. And we want to actually pass this in so that it can do the correct logic, which isn't going to work here. So I'm actually going to delete that so the blueprint doesn't have issues with compiling once we're done with this change. But let's close out of this, and we're going to close out of the editor. And it's actually right here. We're passing in a pointer to a equipable item. What we want to do is pass in T subclass of equipable item. And I'm going to go grab that actually from here. Because it's not equipable item, that's the enum, it's equipable item. I don't need class there. And that should fix that. So we're going to just grab that. And the reason why we don't need class there is we added it up right at the top of the file because we've referenced this quite a few times. You got that. So that's just a weird IntelliSense error. So if we head back to our character and we just switch this out here. Well, now we have some other errors. The reason being is this is a subclass of. So what we need to do here, going to get default object, get slot type. And we can address this just by copying that and throwing that in there. Now, we never actually finished this off looking at it. And what are you complaining about? Declaration is incomplete with bool. Break. Line 120. Maybe incompatible with bool. Oh, maybe this has to be a void. Let's change that to a void and see if that fixes that. Sorry. I actually realized in my rush to finish last episode and try and actually make some movement, I missed a lot of code in here. We're not actually calling any of these functions that we added in. So what we want to do is call those functions. So set backpack item. Well, now we run into this issue where, well, it's a subclass. Oh, that's why. I can leave that as a bool. What definition? Okay, you're good. Equip item T subclass of item. What is that not liking? Okay, we're going to rewrite this quickly and just go like this. Go over back to our header file and create the definition. Because obviously there's something weird in there it didn't like. So we're going to quickly rewrite this. So I'm going to fast forward through this so you guys don't have to watch me doing this again. Okay, so maybe not. I'm not going to fast forward this. I've screwed something up royally here. Item. Static class. No. Let's... It's right there. What have I screwed up? Okay, let's try as a cast. Okay, so that's working. So let's try this. Switch e-item, get slot type, case, e-equipment slot. We're just going to go with head because that's what we're working with in the editor. Break. Excuse me. And I'm going to put a default in there. Break. And so this is going to be set head item e-item. Okay, let's see if this actually works this time. Because yeah, the T subclass of Equippable. That get default should have worked there though. Like, oh, no, that might be why. No. No, that's not it. Okay, so while that built, let's just save that and launch. Probably going to try and build again. And I did make this a blueprint callable function, right? Yep, blueprint callable. So yeah, well, while this builds, I want to cover this. Like, this is, again, some of the things that can happen while you're programming in general, not just a game. I'm speaking with my experience from, like, your everyday programming, not for video games, that you're going to think something works in a particular way. 9 times out of 10, you're going to be right. But every now and again, your brain is, well, potentially, brain's going to misremember something or crosswire a couple of different things, and it's going to cause weird situations like this, where things aren't going to work the way you want them to. So, okay, so we're in the editor. We're back in our third-person blueprint. When it decides to respond, there we go. Nope, it's still laggy. There we go. Okay, equip. Equip item. Now, is that going to work? There we go. Okay, so I'm going to pass in hat1. And we're going to put that up here, move that into true. I'm going to duplicate this, and move that here, and pass in hat2. Okay, compile. Any errors? Nope, that's working. So I'm going to move this out of the way. I'm going to launch play in editor. This is still that issue you can see right here. This is regarding the byte trigger on the deer. So I'll address that in another episode. But okay, so we've got that. We're going to go to type in care, third person, go down to our follow camera, active in the search bar, and just hit auto active. I'm going to hit 4, and that should trigger that breakpoint. So, okay, so I'm going to have to pass those in as 2 separate variables. Okay. So I was trying, this is like with that perception config, I was trying to get fancy. I was trying to pass in just the equipment item, like the equipable item, and let all of that logic there. Obviously that's not working. So instead of bashing my head against this and trying to get it to work, very easy way to fix that. We're going to pass in your e-equipment slot and the item, the skeletal mesh. So going to clear that out. So it's e, this is an enum actually. So enum e, where is it? I'm just going to copy it from here. We'll call that slot. And then it is a use skeletal mesh pointer and mesh. So with that, obviously we need to change up all of our other functions as well, because you can see here we're passing in equippable item base. So item mesh. So you can't use the term mesh because it overrides. Yeah, okay, so I'm just going to grab this here because we're going to have to fix these in all of these functions. So and this is where, like I said, sometimes, and I mentioned this in the when code goes wrong episode a few days ago, sometimes you make a mistake that you don't realize right away because everything works at the time, like it compiled, but now that I've actually got to this, it doesn't need, but it's not working. So we're going to have to change things up a bit there. So now we've got that. I'm going to copy this over. I'm going to go back to our source file, switch this out. We don't need the enum there because we're not forewarning the compiler. I'm going to grab item mesh, get rid of this, switch, and this will just be on slot. And we'll just pass in item mesh here, but then we have all of these functions. So we just grab these. We'll grab that from there because it's the same thing. And the way I had originally done this may have worked with a little bit more digging. Now, as I mentioned again in the sometimes, when code goes wrong, episode, when you're trying to do what is effectively at this stage, I'm trying to do rapid prototyping. You don't want to spend a huge amount of time initially getting it all set up and getting it working. So you want to have things working in as quick a way as possible. So that's things like, okay, this may not be the most efficient way or the best way to handle all of this. It makes the functions a little more complicated, but ultimately what I've done here is I realized there was a problem. What I had done wasn't working. How do I go about fixing it? And what I've done there is instead of having the equip item function take the whole item, which really it should be able to, obviously that's something I'm going to dig into off camera because that's something that I'm going to try to address during a refactoring pass much later on in development, but I'm going to want to look into it and I'll probably add some comments here. Yeah, it failed because of that. So we need to... dislike that, but oh, we don't actually have that in here, that's why. So include, I didn't add that in the character class, did I? Why did I have that switch work then? Oh, it's coming through from what? Okay, so I'm going to have to put that in the header. So include data type and just get rid of U. Why are you saying I don't have a definition? Because it's right there. Okay, let's try this build again. But yeah, like I was saying, I made a mistake, obviously. I was trying to refactor and refine the process too early. It wasn't, I hadn't even made sure it worked before I got there. And I was like, okay, we'll pass in this class reference, we'll get the information, we'll pass that along. Well, something was off there. Obviously, I do need to think about how to refactor that, and I will address that, as I just said, later in the episode. So, while the editor launched, I'm going to pause things because I actually also want to go grab a drink quick. So, I will be back momentarily. Alright, so we're back in the editor here, and we'll see if that change I made actually fixes this issue. So, equip item, obviously it's broken because we changed the function, but what we're going to do is just go equip item. And this is where our class defaults come in. So we're going to grab slot type and mesh. I'm hoping this works because otherwise the last two episodes have been for naught. I'm pretty confident this should work. Connect those up, make sure they're set. They're set, so we're compile and save. So we'll try this again. Yes, I need to fix that. So, char third person character, follow camera, activate, auto activate. Okay, 4. There we go. So now you can see, like I said, with simplifying the process there and getting rid of that overcomplication I put in, that actually goes back to my description of using the KISS method. It has fixed that for us, so now we can switch back and forth. So that's giving us that logic that we're going to need to actually expand on things. My animation blueprint's broken because I haven't fixed it for this mesh yet. But that gives us the logic we need and the fix to get things ready for actually adding in like a character equipment slot. Now, one thing that's going to be involved there is we're going to need to make some changes to the UI. And then we're also going to need to create some world objects for these as well so we can actually put them in our inventory. What I'm going to do first, though, just because that is frustrating me, we're actually going to fix that animation blueprint for this guy. Because right now we're just using a static idle mesh on him. And I don't like that. So where is our mega post-apocalyptic characters? Do I have my retarget atoms in here? Yes. So what we're going to do, I'm going to go into our project file. Actually, no, I'm going to do it here. Actually, does it have an anim blueprint that comes with it? Animation blueprint, NMBP. Am I blind? I think I'm being blind. Animation blueprint, there it is. No, it doesn't. Okay. It just comes with some animations. Because if I select animation sequence, actually it doesn't come with anything. Okay. So actually I'm going to do it in here. Anim blueprint. Let's go to third party, third person. That's because I've still got the animation filter in there. Wow, that's being slow. Okay, turn that off. Animation blueprint. And we're going to just create a copy of Manny. There it is. So click and drag into the retarget anims. Copy here. ABP mega post character MPC. I was going to call it that. Find target animations. Assign skeleton. They all use the same skeleton, so I'm not too worried about that. But what are the names? That one there, I think. So accept that. Yep. So this anim BP should work and not mess things up once we get the animations sorted. So we're going to go to the anim graph. Warning, not 4 and 5 not found. Okay, so that's easy enough. We'll just bring that up there. I think this is still using a UE4 mannequin. Compile that. What's this other warning? Okay, so this isn't going to work easily, so I'm just going to recreate this very quickly. So delete that. Animation blueprint. Yeah, that won't work. Actually, no, it was body cloth 1. ABP mega post-apocalyptic character. Going to save. And then the other thing, get rid of that actually. And we need to end it in a blend space. Blend space. And that is for the same one. ABS walk idle. Now this, as I've mentioned in the past, I'm not great with animation. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to fast forward through pretty much most of this because all I'm doing is recreating a very basic anim blueprint that you would find in pretty much any animation. So, and apparently those anims aren't crap. Okay, so let me find the skeleton for these. So find skeleton. Head 01. Okay. So gotta delete these. Okay, well, either way, I'm going to fast forward through things here, and I'm going to create an animation blueprint and the blend space for these. So I will be back once I get that done. All right, so I've gone through and I've got the Anim BP set up and just really basic. There's no jump or anything yet. I still need to get that, but I've got the basics in now. So we're gonna just compile and save that, do a quick test run. All right, look at that. And oh, no, something is not working. We are not. Oh, he's attacking me, and I'm taking damage. Nice. Okay, so what didn't work there? Where's our error message? Oh, I know exactly what it is. I forgot to connect the speed into the animation blueprint in the anim graph in our state machine. Idle walk, and that is ground speed. Okay, we'll give this one more quick try just to make sure. And once this is working, this is actually where I'm going to end the episode, just because we are pushing the... Okay, I got to change that because the walk speed, that's not the right one. It looks like he's walking in place. But so we are getting some movement there. Let's go to fix that. Oh, I've got walk in place, not walk forward. Put you at 125 and 0 because we don't want anything. How do we get rid of an axis? Axis for triangulation, axis to scale animation, horizontal, vertical. Yeah, there's got to be a way to set that so it only shows the one. But okay, we'll give this one last try. Okay, so obviously our animation is not in a position, like the speeds need to be tweaked, because you can see his feet are like moonwalking almost, the way he's moving around there. So do need to make some tweaks there. We're going to run over here. The run is fine, but okay, the wolf's attacking, and we as a character are still taking damage as well. So technically right now we're dead. Hey there, folks. So last episode we fixed up the couple of mistakes I had in the code for setting the skeletal mesh on the characters. And I also, at the end of the last episode, went through, fixed up the animation blueprint for the mesh we were using. I was going to quickly show that because I know I also mentioned I was going to tweak a couple of the last little things that I hadn't put on there yet, specifically the jump animation. There is some oddities in here. It's downside of the way I'm using the old method versus the new method. Doesn't quite line up, the IK and control rig and that. But in here you can see I've got jump. Apparently I left my phone on again. We have jump in air and land. This is pretty much the exact same as old school animation blueprints. Again, as I said, I'm not very big on... Oh, I'll have to look into these animation states. One of these, it's not... Oh, okay. Don't look into those. But anyway, so I got that set up. The other thing I did, and that is basically, it's something I'm going to be working on between episodes just because it's covering the same thing multiple times, and I don't want to do that. I did some digging, and even though, where are we here, Mega Post-Apocalyptic Characters, we do have a lot of stuff here. The problem I have is it's all, let me just filter this down to skeletal mesh. It's all segments, and it's going to be really hard to have a player character underneath that, or just a character, humanoid, underneath all of this, and be able to switch things out and not have sort of missing portions. Like you could have, let me just see if I can find something. Well, thankfully these are all sleeved, but you may not be wearing gloves on the character, but this set only comes with gloves. So what I did is I dug through and found one of my other asset store assets. For the observant of you who may have noticed, it's this man folder, and you can see this guy is a little more segmented, and specifically what I'm looking for is this mesh where it's the full human, and from there it's going to allow to attach other mesh to it easier and things like that. However, there is one issue I found with that, and just go here, go to our third person, open that up, and then go to our viewport, and you can see here, if I grab what is our base mesh, our head, let me just go back and grab, I think parts is the only one. No, it is full. Yeah, he's in full. Okay. And then we go back to our blueprint here, and if we set him, you can see he's slightly disproportioned in comparison. So there is going to be some work I need to do off camera to go through and tweak these. And because they are specific to assets I'm using, I want to not record that because you may not have these assets. It is very unique. But what I'm going to be doing, where's our torso mesh here, just so you can see, I'm going to be going into, say, Blender, and just, I don't want to scale that up, I'm going to leave that one. Actually, but anyways, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to probably go into something like Blender, and I'm just going to be rescaling the mesh so that they cover properly, and things like that, because as you can see here, see if we move that over ever so slightly, you can see we can't even reposition it. So What I'm going to do, though, that's something I'm going to do off camera, just because there is a lot of work there. It's very tedious, time consuming, and not going to achieve much in the way of moving the project forward for at least anyone who's following along. I do understand this is 5 minutes of me just driveling on about things, but I wanted to cover that because it's something I'm going to be doing off camera. The other thing I want to do quickly is first person camera. We want to move that to a new position. And I hate how that works when it's attached. Okay, what do we move that? So I'm going to set that to 0 and that one to 0. It should pull it forward. So just quickly there, I just moved the camera forward a bit so we can take a look and see, are we outside of our head now? Yes, that's the issue we had where the deer's missing bite sphere. Yeah, so here you can see it's obviously not the best, but we were getting what most people would call a true first-person perspective. You can go look down, see yourself, see your shadow. You can see there's some quirks there when it comes to the jump state. I thought I had fixed that, but obviously not. Let's quickly switch over to third person to see if that makes it a difference, because I swore I fixed that. The wolf's chasing the deer. Okay, so that's working there. It is working now, so... Oh, no, there we go, it's not. So I'm also going to, obviously in my free time, I'm going to be digging more into the new animation blueprint process, the control rig, the way things were done using the mannequin. But for the time being, just so we can start moving things forward, what I'm going to be doing, go back to our third person blueprint here. Because we have all these different components, I'm going to just be setting this back to Manny. Let me just pull that up here. Manny, set that back. And you can see there's going to be... Actually, I might not. Let's see how badly does this break all of those other mesh, because we're changing our skeleton. Oh, not too bad. Oh no, a lot of stuff is really jank. So this is something you guys may stumble across in your own projects. You're going to have a problem where you have multiple mesh like that you want to try and use, but they don't work together. That's something you're going to run into. So with that, I'm going to revert that back, where you're going to need to basically work on acquiring, however that be, make it yourself, hire someone, find an asset on the marketplace that is genuinely a all-inclusive. It includes the base skin mesh and then all the different equipment you want to go on. And that's where, unfortunately, working from multiple different asset store assets, it's just not going to work. So that's also something I'm going to have to try and do in the background, is sort it out so I have a singular setup. And that could just be I try to actually make my own models, but I suck at modeling. Either way, now that we've got that done, we do want to actually move things forward. And I realize I've just spent 8 minutes talking about this. So first thing I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to get rid of all of the stuff we put in the last episode. Actually, I'm just going to break that connector so we can't accidentally do it. And drag all of this out of the way. Comment it, dev testing equipment. And I'm going to change that color to red. Okay, so move that out of the way. So anyways, what we need to do is we need to start working on, let me just pull this over, open up our, actually let's go harvest a tree so I can pick that up. And it's in our inventory. So we need to set it up so that our inventory, oh, we lost the icon. So anyways, going back to what I was saying, we need to go through and set it up so that we can go through and have something in our inventory that we can use to log broke equip. So there is a few things at a code level we're going to want to do for that. So looking back in Visual Studio, we have this function right here, which is part of our item base get UI data, and that returns obviously the index we're passing in, the item name, description, use text, is usable, the icon, and the current stack size. We also want to include another variable which is equippable. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to grab this entire line, and yes, I understand the editor is still running right now. I'm going to grab this entire line. I'm going to go to our equippable item base header, and this is a public function, but we're going to go through and make this an override, so that what this is going to do is this will, I've got that in the wrong plate, override, put that in entirely the wrong place because I've got this as a header item. Does not override base class. Yes, because this isn't returning any additional information. Well, we need to look at this struct. In here you can see a couple of things. So I'm going to grab this property. I'm going to just clear out that tooltip actually for now because we're going to use this again. Bool b is equippable equals false. We want that to be false by default. And then I'm going to add another one. Bool b is equipped equals false. And what I also want to do here, you'll notice we have a constructor. I'm going to take this constructor, duplicate it, and then add in const bool reference be equippable. It's a double P. I figured that out a couple episodes back. And we're going to leave it at that. And then at the bottom here, we're just going to go be is equippable equals be equippable. And I have two cases of pretty much the same word. So there we go. Okay, so now that we've done that, we can go back to our engine base class. And in here, we should just be able to add true, and this will override that function. Oh, no, it won't, because I believe we need virtual in the front. There we go. So we can't add, and I've mentioned this before, but we can't add the U function blueprint callable blueprint pure, because this specific reference to this function, where's it going to let me now? Maybe it will. Anyways, with that, I'm going to close out of the editor here quickly. I'm going to save that, even though I didn't make any real changes. And then, once this finishes, anyways, so going back to explaining what this is for while I wait for the editor to shut everything down. These two new variables, this is basically one so we can use it for our UI to add a button. And then this one is so we can flip-flop the text on that button. And potentially, and this is just for the purpose of our very janky inventory UI right now. We're going to say equip. And if it is equipped, we'll have the text say unequipped. And if it isn't, it will say equipped or equip. So now that's done, we're going to run a quick build. And yes, that's actually something I wanted to talk about, and I'll do that while this builds. Things like the UI and everything that right now at this stage look really, really janky. That's how it should be at the early stages of things. Like I know I've used this analogy before. Writing code for any sort of program is... Oh, what failed? Oh, so IntelliSense wasn't throwing, so I was right. It can't have that. So anyways, writing any sort of program through code, you need to treat it like building a house. You build your foundations, then you throw up your walls, then you put on your roof. Sorry, not even the walls itself, but the framing, your roof. And then you start worrying about like insulating and wrapping, and putting on the walls and wrapping for the outside, and then drywall, mud, paint, all of that. You do that in a specific order. And the house right at the start looks like crap because of it, because it's all just this hodgepodge. You can't really see things for what they're going to be. And that's also very similar to how code is written. You don't worry about making it look super pretty right at the start, because you could have foundational code in there that has to change, that then changes how it visually looks. So that's why like the player inventory screen looks really, really janky right now, because, well, I'm not going to put a ton of effort into a UI system for the inventory that I'm going to have to change, because ultimately I want drag and drop. Like I don't want buttons on each item to equip, unequip, things like that, because it's not intuitive. But at the same time, I don't want to put all of that effort into making that UI look pretty or look good at this early stage, because I don't even know if my inventory system is solidified yet. I don't know if my equipment system is solidified yet. So why am I going to spend time to create an equipment grid for, for what, 7 items? Well, technically 8, because left hand, right hand, for 8 items, when maybe I'm going to have 15, maybe I'm going to have 6. So there's going to be points where you need to like just leave things ugly. And right now, this is still one of those points where things need to be left ugly. But anyway, so now with that, let's take a look at our items, actually. So project, blueprints, items. Let's create a new folder in here. New folder, clothing. Clothing item base, select that, and this is going to be trying to think what to use here. BP mouse mask 01. We'll just do that. Save that. I'm going to open that up. And then, because I just need a default editor for this, I'm going to close it and reopen it so we get this basic default screen. Now we need to go through and sort out a couple of other things there. So first things first, we're going to go in mesh parts, filter down to skeletal. I'm going to use that and just copy that into our character mesh item. Move that out of the screen for now. Next thing I'm going to do is open this up. Opens up as this, and then create asset. Well, can't really do anything there. It's over here on the right. I don't know why make static mesh doesn't fall into the create asset side of things, but it's its own dedicated thing. So we're going to make a static mesh. Actually, no, I'm going to keep that in a relevant folder. No. So this is something that's going to be down to how your project wants to do it. Your organization. Item world mesh. And I've mentioned this before. SM mouse mask 01. And this is just 01 because it's the first. I might do more, I might not. Got to figure out what I want to do there. But as I was saying, regarding project organization, we've got the mesh, item world mesh, clothing, and that's going to be down to how your project wants to do it. So now that we've got that, though, if we go take a look at our folder structure here, clothing, remove that filter, we can see we now have that mesh. I'm going to save that. It has 0 collision primitives. I'm going to leave that for now, but it's going to make sure that's selected, and we're going to go back to our data sheet here, and I'm going to open this up. So there's our world mesh, item name, mouse mask, item description, a mask of a mouse. Pickup text, pick up. Use text would be equip. Is usable, yes. Icon, I'm going to just give it that for now. Max stack size 1, resource tags, I'm not going to add any, item weight is 1, we'll just leave that as default. Actually, now let's just quickly check. Clothing, consumable, junk, log. Why did it not want to render that? Oh well. So now that we've got that, let's go take a quick look at our UI logic. And it opens up on the left. Okay, so in here you can see we have use and drop. Well, we need to add a modification for this use button. So we're going to go to our graph, event construct, clean this up a little bit so I can see where everything's going. Item name, okay, use button text, that would be this one here. So what we need to do is do a select, drag this up, push this into that text there, and we're going to use the is equippable as this wildcard. I'm going to duplicate this one, and we're going to use the is equipped as the next wildcard. Put this into the true. So if it is not equipped, we want this to say equip, and if it is equipped, we want it to say unequip. Okay, so that should sort out creating that base widget. Now, clicking the on use button, that is where we need to also have some changes here. So we'll move this, bring it over, give me the option, yeah, as pin, don't need use text. That one there, and we'll get rid of usable. And then what I'm actually going to do here is, as a protection, or we're going to add an or boolean if it is usable or equipable. Either of those will enable the button. All right, so let's clean this up some more. You'll notice I am incredibly messy when it comes to blueprints. I really need to get better at cleaning these up, but we're already at 23 minutes. This episode's going to be a two-parter. But anyway, so now that we've got that, what we want to do is add a branch. And if it is equipable, we're going to go down a different branch of code. Well, now you can see here we're calling something on our parent, which is use item and index. Well, that's our inventory HUD. So I'm going to pull that up. That's this one here. I hate how it does this. So in here, if we go to our graph, refresh inventory widget function, all of this, what we want to do is add a new function, which is equip item at index. Now, first of all, this is not going to correctly set anything that's currently equipped. That'll be something we'll cover next episode. But for inputs on this, we want to obviously have IDX, and we want to have that as an integer, and we also want to be equip. And that is to say, yes, we are actually going to be equipping it. So now that we've got that, we're going to go back to our inventory item. Excuse me. We are going to, off our parent, equip. Helps if I spell equip right. Equip item at index. We are going to pass in the index, and then actually on here we do need is equipped. Excuse me. That's the basics for our UI there. So the next part is going to be here in our HUD. Well, let's take a look at what we have for some of our other items. Use item at index. So we are from our inventory at the index, we're calling the use item at index. Well, this means we're going to need actually this should be refresh inventory widget no matter what. We need to add a function for equip item at index. And this is where the index, and the reason why we made these variables, go back to character, equip item, why we made this a public one, because we're going to pass all of this information through. So what we need to do on our inventory component, and actually after this is where we're going to probably wrap things up, component, inventory component, we're going to go down here and you can see we have use item at index, drop item at index. We're going to add in a new view function, bool equip item at index. And this is going to be a const int index. And we're also going to add a const bool reference of b equip. And this b equip, as I mentioned, is for being able to take the item off. Quick action, create that. Now, before I hop out of things, actually, I do realize here in our inventory widget, we are just passing in its current state. If it is equipped, we want to say false. So this is an issue I had the other episode, not bool. I forgot to include that. So now that we've got that in place, let's clean this up a little bit. I'll do that off camera. I'm not going to waste more time on that. So with that, we now have equip item at index, use item at index, and we are also going to be leaving our drop item at index or drop stack at index. We don't need to do anything there. So back to our code. Let's open up our inventory component source file. It's already open. What am I doing? So here we have use item at index. Well, we're going to just copy this whole thing here because that's where it's failed. So inventory contents at index, get default object. That's what we want. I believe that's what we want. Trying to think here. My brain doesn't want to work. Because you are... Oh, it's been a while since I've worked on this. UItem base. Okay, so... Actually, yes, I remember what I needed to do here. So we want if cast... No, sorry. We need to add a header in here as well. Okay, so if as equip item equals cast And then we want I believe that is the one with the default object. And we need an extra one of those, I think. Okay, so that's the open close, that's the cast, that's the if. Yeah. Okay, so what this is doing, and this is actually where I'm going to end things off. I don't like ending it in the middle of something, but we're already at that 30-minute mark, and there's quite a bit more work on this, so works is a good place to cut. But what we're doing here is we're going through and we're basically saying, okay, we have this item in the inventory. We need it as an equipable item. And then, actually, I'll ATF character, equip item as equip get slot as equip get character. Okay, so this is actually where I'm going to end it off. So what we've done here, and this is where we'll continue on with the next episode, is we've gone through, we're getting that item information out of the index. We are assuming, well, making sure it actually can be cast to an equipable item, because our inventory itself is a tier array of subclasses of the UItem base, which the equipable item is a subclass. It's a child derived class. So from that, we can use that to cast, hopefully successfully, as a, equipable item. In this case, it's particularly a clothing item, but it's equippable, which is, the clothing is derived from Equippable, and Equippable has all that information we need, so we're not worried about that. And we're just passing through its slot and the mesh. And in this case, that should update our player character. Now, there's obviously more we need to do. We still need to finish creating the world pickup for this and a few other things. Hey there, folks. So last episode, we finished off with this little chunk of code here, which was basically saying we're going to grab the inventory item. We're going to treat it as a equipable item base, and we're going to pass that through to the owning component, or sorry, the technically the owning character, not the owning component. So the owner, if we go to definition of that, you can see that's a TF character. And then we're going to just pass through the slot and the character mesh. So there is some more code work we need to do there. However, what I want to do right now actually is just quickly do those world pickup mesh, because we don't have something for these. So item blueprints dev, is that what we got it as? Yeah. So world pickup, and what's a derived class? That's pickup actor base, right? Yeah. So pickup actor base, and this is BP mouse mask 01 pickup. So I'm going to open that guy up, and because this is just a data object more so, we have no code or anything we're worried about. I'm just going to close that and reopen it, so we get this default setup here. And let's just grab this information quick. I'm actually just going to move the content browser out of the way and bring this back. And then try to maximize the content browser again. Okay, so our world mesh is the mouse. Physics time, I'm going to say is 1. Inventory item, mouse mask 01. Item count 1. Interaction text is going to be pick up. compile and save that. Okay, I'm going to just pull that up as a focus in the content browser. I'm going to put this in the corner over here. Oh, jump. Shadows. Let's go to unlit. Those tree shadows are causing problems, so. And as you can see, because we created a static mesh, it's way up in the air. But, sorry, because we created that based off the... Yes, I know, the deer issue. And there's no collision primitives. Oh, there it is. So it fell down to the ground. But because... Oh, there we go. Pick up. And you can see it's added in there. And we have our equip. But that's not going to do anything. So we'll click that. It doesn't do anything. Because nothing's getting passed back to the inventory. So... Now we've done that, though. That actually reminded me there's one other thing I wanted to do to the UI. We have this here. We needed to go through and... Oh no, we haven't finished that code, that's why. So with that, we're going to close out of the editor. Save that selected item. I still need to go through and fix that deer issue, so I might do that in the next episode because it's starting to get frustrating. But so on here, we're also going to want to do as equipped item. E-item base. And actually move this back up here. That was me doing some testing. U property. Sorry, I just had to look at my notes there for a second. Bool B is equipped equals false, and then we're just going to add a U function, blueprint callable, typing too fast here, void set is equipped. Const bool reference be equipped, and I'm just going to do this in the header for now. B is equipped equals B equipped. Now the whole purpose of this is just so that that information is stored here, because what we want to do is fix this. Right now, oh no, sorry, that's equippable. Trying to think where I was going with that. Oh, yes, so in here, where I was wanting to go with that was this one here. Const, and this is for save game. Const bool B is equipped. I might have to change that because isn't that, yeah, B, I'm going to change that to a lowercase I. B is equipped equals B is equipped. And then we can go back to our, I got way too many items open here. Let me close some of these. That's the one we want. So just to explain, again, this is for save game purposes because we're going to want to set this up so that it's saved as part of the inventory. But now that we've got that anyways, go back to our inventory. We want to go set IntelliSense is being a pain in my butt. Let's wait for that to fix. There we go. As equip item set is equipped, be equipped. And that's the reason why we wanted to have that not Boolean as we're calling this function. So what I'm going to do though, just because I'm personally not 100% this code is going to work, I'm going to put a breakpoint there. We're going to launch into the editor, and this is going to take a little bit to build, so I'm going to pause the video and I'll be back once we're back in the editor. Okay, so we're back in the editor, and let's see if this is going to work for us now. So I'm going to hit play. Yes, the issue with the deer. Go pick up her hat. Pick up inventory and then click equip. Okay. Oh, we haven't set up the UI for that yet. So in our inventory widget, we want to check in here just quickly. We are calling equip item at index. So we go into our UI. We need to go into our equip item at index. Actually, we'll use yeah. So our reference to our inventory, equip item at index, and we'll pass through this information. And actually, doesn't matter on that return, so we'll clear that up. And we'll do the same thing, refresh inventory widgets, and that should change the text for us, is the whole purpose for calling that. So do a quick compile, move this out of the way, and hit play again. Come on. Why are you not wanting to let me pick you up now? There we go. Okay. Okay, so there we go. Owner is valid. Index is 0. Inventory content is just the 1. Okay, so now let's see. This is one of the things I'm not sure if it was going to work. It did. Okay. And then we're going to continue, and we should see our shadow now has the mouse ears on it. Now if we hit unequip, well, here we go. We're now just putting the hat back on. So we need to fix that. And then obviously, as you just seen there, we dropped it and we still have the hat on. That's something else we're going to need to work on. But what we need to do now is here in the code, we need to deal with this. Well, it's easy enough. We're going to do that right there. So going to close out of the editor and going to quickly do a rebuild, and this should be fairly quick because we just changed a small line of code there. I got my keys in my pocket, they're stabbing me. I say this is going to be a quick build, but apparently not. So I'm going to pause the recording, and I will be back as soon as we are back in the editor. Or there's a build error, depending. Oh, I say that, and it looks like it's moving forward. So we'll keep going then. So as I mentioned there, we do have this issue of, well, we were equipped. So we need to, and we dropped it. So the build works, so I'll launch in. So we had the item equipped, and then we dropped it. So we also need to take into account for that. And that's going to be a case of we're going to need to modify our drop stack logic, or drop item at. And that is here. I'm just making sure we don't have any other drops. It's just the one, right? Drop stack at index. Yep. So once we make sure this part works for equipping and unequipping, we will then be doing some additional checks in here and a few other things. So not worried about building the nav mesh. So when this works, we'll hop in. Yeah. Oh, back into the game. Run over. Being laggy. Okay, run over. You can see we're wearing our hat. I'm going to turn that off actually, but okay, give me pick up. You let me pick you up. I guess that tree might have been causing some problems there. I'm not sure. Come on, let me pick you up. I think it might be the fact that there's no collision on that mesh. So let's sort that out quickly. Mesh, item world, mesh, SM mouse. So this is something that's fairly easy to do. Just open the mesh up, go and search collision. And down here, where is it? Collision complexity, project default. You want use complex as simple. And in your collisions, no, where is it? Show complex collision. And you can see that's going to be the collision mesh. So we're going to save that and see if that fixes our problem. Now, that's something to consider between complex and simple collision. Is complex collision makes things a little more resource intensive when doing collision testing. So, okay, so we picked that up. We'll hit I, we'll hit equip. Okay, so it is true. So when it comes down here, it should be getting character mesh. Continue. We've got the mouse ears on and our shadow. Hit unequipped. This is false, so this should now be a null pointer, which means the mouse ears are now gone. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of this breakpoint so we can bounce back and forth easily in the editor. And you can see it's going on, coming off, on, off. Now, as I mentioned, it's on, and we hit drop. Well, it's well, we're still in inventory. Actually, I got to add something there. We're still wearing it, and we can actually just see it. And it is also up in the air. So, pick that up. It was saved as equipped. Drop, still up in the air. So that's the next thing. Oh, what are these errors? Simulate physics, precision level mouse mask, world mesh, but it is a complex as simple collision. Oh, so that's an issue. We can't have complex. So let us take a look. So we have no simple collision, but we do have complex. So let's get rid of complex, and then we're going to fix that. So let us generate a basic collision there. So, okay, now we're going to do a quickly test to make sure that lets us pick it up. And there you go. You can see it sitting on the floor. You can pick it up, drop it. And it still got our inventory open. And there it is on the floor. Okay, so that is working now. All right, so now, as I mentioned, the next thing we need to do is we need to address dropping it. So we can do that in here, and it's going to be part of this logic. So if we need... get default object. No, we want to check what is that. Oh, my brain just went. I just covered this. Oh, it's not here. It's only if it's a B is usable. That is a protected. It's stack weight. Oh, I know what we can do here. We can add in another U function. virtual bool. Can I not spell virtual right? You going to fix that? Well, it's spelled right. Is equippable. Const return false, because on here we don't want a normal item to do that, but we're going to grab this, we're going to throw it into our equipment item base. Const override return true. Okay, so now in our inventory component we can go is equippable. So what we're doing here, just to explain, we have gone through and we've added basically a quick check to say, okay, if this is an equippable item, we need to do a couple other things. So we've got that. We're going to now grab this if condition here, because the whole purpose of this is to save us having to do a cast if we don't need to. On its own, this will create a cast which does have some processing component to it, so it's going to be a little resource intensive. You'll hear a lot of people say, oh, use interfaces. Interfaces are good for certain things. Don't get me wrong, if you can avoid a cast by using an interface, that's great. However, because we're working with a data object, not a physical, like in-game object per se, we don't want to worry about a cast. So basically what we're doing though is we're doing this quick check here to say, okay, is this something we're going to want to cast to an object? Or cast. If we don't need a cast, we're going to skip it. In this case, if it is equippable, we're going to come into here, and then it's going to be if as equip item is equipped. No, we didn't add that information in there, so we need to add that. We have U function blueprint callable, and this is going to also be blueprint pure. Blueprint pure. Bool is equipped. Const. And return B is equipped. All right, so now we've got that. It's going to be if is equipped. We need to remove it. So we're just going to do what we've got here. I'm going to grab this. We're going to just pass in a null pointer because we're saying that we're removing it. We don't care. And then we want to set this as false, because you have to remember this information is carried over into the world pickup actor. Like that, this one right here. All of this information is going to get carried over and stored with the pickup, and then that's why when we picked up the hat in our inventory, it said unequipped. So now that we've done that, again, we're going to do another quick build here. And if this is all set up and working, then that's actually where I'm going to end the episode off, because the next step is going to be, I actually don't know what the next step's going to be, because that gets the basics of the equipment system set up. Obviously, as I mentioned, the UI component for it is, well, it's nasty looking. I'm going to go through and do some very, very basic UI work. Just because, as you noticed in this video, I kept forgetting that I was actually still in my inventory. So, but, okay, so we're in the editor here. I'm going to hit play. Yes. Okay, and head back over. We'll pick up our hat, open our inventory, we're going to equip it, and we're going to drop it. And there you go. You can see, once we get out of our inventory, just from our shadow, and that's the other reason the control rig's messed up. You can see just from our shadow that everything is working a lot better. So, and on that note then, folks, this is a slightly shorter episode, but this is basically finishing up the current state of the general equipment system. I'm not sure exactly what the next episode is going to be covering just yet. There is a few things that I want to try and get done in the next portions, just so we can get to what would be considered a state of... and now I don't use this as in like early access or anything like that, because honestly, this isn't a state where the game's even remotely ready to go to the public. This is something where you would start doing some internal testing. But I know I want to finish off, obviously, the weapon system, because I want to be able to... Well, start off the weapon system, because I want to be able to sort of like start... Apparently the deers aren't afraid of me. Attacking and being attacked. Need to tweak the animals a little bit. I want to go through, and I haven't for quite some time, finish working on buildings, because there's a lot to do there. Obviously there's some shader issues here. Non-nanite marking job queue overflow. Performance may be affected. This occurs when non-nanite mesh cover a large area of the shadow map. Okay, so it's something else I want to go through and try to get things set up for nanite. I think part of that is because we also have our time of day changing here slowly, so... But with it, there is still quite a few things I want to do, as I mentioned. I need to get the equipment system finished up so that weapons are available to the character. I want to get it set up that the equipment, like clothing and stuff, has an effect on the character, helps with your temperature regulation, things like that. Need to do another pass at the AI, because right now the wolf just attacked the deer on sight. Well, I don't want that. I want it to be the wolf attacks the deer on sight if they're hungry. The wolf attacks the player on sight if they're hungry. So on and so forth. So there's going to be some further expansion on the AI logic there, obviously, to account for that. And like I said, I want to try and get some buildings finished off, and then I want to, because I haven't done it for a while yet, while now, I want to do some more work on the map to try and get something in place that could be considered a very early stage tech demo. And I don't even like calling it that, because it's not even an early stage tech demo. It's just putting all the pieces together and see if you're starting to get the shape you want. So anyways, folks, with that, I'm going to end things here. As I said, I'm not sure what the next episode is going to be. But as always, thank you for watching. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, suggestions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below, or hop over onto the Discord. I try to answer things there as, well, both comments and in the Discord, as quickly as I can. But again, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.